After leaving Malek's Bastion, the next leg on our journey is the Oracle's Cave. The section leading to the cave starts at the snowy plateau beneath Malek's Bastion. Here the area is noticeably similar to the retail layout, but extra cliff sections have been added along with a bat beacon.
It would seem Malek's destiny with my blade was postponed. Perhaps Ariel could offer further guidance.
There are also no trees to cut down either. Following the trail eastward leads up towards the map tile with the Oracle's Cave. But rather than take us directly to it, the trail instead turns southward and heads down to a new area, which may well be an alternative for the Stonekeep and Mistform dungeon. We'll come back to that later, but for now it's important to note something that becomes apparent for this middle section of the game world. The map tiles don't quite fit together properly. The tiles seem somewhat unfinished, with plenty of unused spaces and areas that seem to be intended to be inaccessible but are nevertheless connected, along with numerous cases where collision hasn't been implemented properly. In this case, Kain is deposited high on the western cliff, but the reaction of the terrain seems to indicate he's not intended to be there. Taking advantage of the lack of collision, or using our walk-through walls shortcut, we can drop down to the canyon below and go north. A wall here stops progression, but it seems intended to have been connected later, as the canyon matches perfectly with the area behind it, which connects to the main passage heading up to the Oracle's Cave. The Oracle's Cave map tile is clearly in the process of development at this stage, and is obviously unfinished. Nevertheless, some of the more recognisable parts can be made out, with a cave on the far side of a lake area dotted with icy patches, and another cave beneath a cliff nearby. Unfortunately, neither cave is connected to internal areas, so we can't be completely sure where the caves were originally intended to lead. One absence is notable, however. The northwestern cave network, which was a secret area in the retail game, is missing, with the cave opening not present. The area code is present in files, but is used for a totally different dungeon, in the style of the Bone Armor dungeon. Sadly, that one isn't linked in either the game world or the level select, and cannot be accessed at this time. The cave directly ahead actually led to the Stun dungeon in the retail version. These areas are present in the Alpha game world, but can only be accessed via the developer's level select, and it's unclear if the intention was for it to be in the same place in the Alpha. The Stun dungeon is practically identical to the retail version, with the only change being the lack of teleporters in the Alpha version. These were apparently added to later versions to allow Kain to warp from the final room back to the initial save altar so he could leave through the way he came in. The Alpha instead has another cave passage in its place, potentially suggesting this was intended to connect to another area, possibly the Oracle's cave itself.
Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the Heart of Darkness restores vampiric unlife. It can be used over and over again, but always consumes magical energy from the one who uses it. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body. These curious devices hurl bolts of whirling energy and eviscerate my human enemies by stripping ragged flesh from blood-stained bone. Should this object strike an enemy, rot and decay would instantly eat their flesh and leave only a pool of blood and tissue. For a time after, the toxins are still active and therefore lethal to the touch. The human mind is a fragile thing. One minor shock properly timed can render them catatonic and ripe for feeding. Ve Victus! Victus! Ve Victus!
In retail, the Oracle's cave entrance was in a cave slightly to the right behind some tents, and the Oracle's cave proper was preceded by an introductory maze cave area that had its own map designation. In the Alpha, this introductory area is not present, but neither is the opening leading to it, potentially suggesting the main Oracle's cave was to be reached through the Stun Cave instead. This also leads on to the first change of the area, in that the Alpha has a save altar in the first room of the Oracle's cave map area. This tile is missing from later versions, and the retail version has a different save altar positioned in the last section of the cave maze area. The Oracle's cave itself is largely similar to the retail version, with minor variations of ice, shooters and columns.
Ve Victus! Ve Victus! These curious devices hurl bolts of whirling energy and eviscerate my human enemies by stripping ragged flesh from blood-stained bone. Ve Victus!
One notable difference is the presence of an unidentified enemy class, resembling a red globe and shooting projectiles.
Ve Victus! Ve Victus! Ve Victor! 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 Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the Heart of Darkness restores vampiric unlife. It can be used over and over again, but always consumes magical energy from the one who uses it. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body.
The biggest changes were towards the end of the area, with the rooms around the Oracle's chamber being reshuffled. Immediately before the museum chamber, the retail version has a room listed as Section 44, which houses a save altar. This room is not present in the Alpha, and is incredibly similar to the Alpha's initial save altar, perhaps suggesting it was relocated in later builds. The museum room remains similar, however its contents seem to be higher resolution and better lit, and are moved around. The Alpha version has no chronicle, different shields, 2 guns, and 2 dolls, one of which appears to be showing a middle finger to the player. There are also patches of ice and crystal that are missing from the retail version. None of the museum items is given any explanation in the Alpha version. Curiously, the Oracle's chamber, which is almost identical to retail, is given the Section 44 coding in the Alpha. In the retail, that coding is used for the prior save altar, and the Oracle's chamber is instead listed as Section 45. From here, it's not possible to progress in the Alpha, as the Oracle's cutscene ends with a crash, and the eastern passageway does not connect to the rest of the world. However, in the retail counterpart, it's actually a different version of the museum that Kain emerges into after meeting the Oracle, with the incapacitate spell in place and the connections to the outside world added. That tile is not present in the Alpha, and so incapacitate is not present, and there's no mural. Instead, a patch of ice takes its place. In retail, the cavern leads out through a series of passages in the cave maze map area to the eastern cave beneath the cliffs, and it's likely the Alpha Eastern Passage was intended to end up in the same area. Emerging in the eastern cave beneath the cliffs and directing the player south to the next area.
These curious devices hurl bolts of whirling energy and eviscerate my human enemies by stripping ragged flesh from blood-stained bone.
Join us next time as we explore the Stonekeep Mist Dungeon, the 2 possible Lakes of the Dead, and the Roundabout area.